Hi, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. This is the temporary Hall of Famer, Nick Wright. Temporary only because if I say it for too many days, I'm going to get something from him.
No.
So enjoy it, hang out in it,
do not
marinate
announce me
in
as
it.
a Hall of Famer. Cris is in one of the most recognized Hall of Fames in the world. I'm in a Hall of Fame as of yesterday. That means a lot to me, but nothing to people outside of the Syracuse or broadcast.
But you do have a fan in my wife. Yesterday when I came, she was like, I can't believe you said that about Nick in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was mean.
And then she was like, but that was funny.
It was funny. It was mean. It was cutting. It cut me to my core, but it's fine. Good to see you this morning, my friend.
Listen,
Good to see you
so we're done with the Hall of Fame. We know you're in it. We appreciate it. We respect it, but we're moving on from it.
Absolutely. Let's do the television show.
Well said.
Thank you.
Vamped enough.
Well said.
Big
You're the one who said it.
show. That's why I said that.
There might be a little paperwork. You're not in there yet.
Jam-packed show for you today on this Tuesday. Big Ben's season is officially over. We'll discuss what that means for the Steelers. The Saints will try to stay afloat until Drew Brees returns, but we start with a little Monday night football. Jets, Browns, and OBJ put on quite a show in his return to New York with a highlight reel one-handed catch there. Also scored his first touchdown as a Brown. A career-long 89-yard score. Finished with 6 catches for 161 yards. Took off that $2 million watch he was wearing before the game, so he caused no controversy. Well, a little bit maybe. And while the Browns beat the Jets 23-3, Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield knows they weren't great. There is still work to be done.
Not losing sight of that a win is a win, especially on the road, and we needed this one. But, you know, field goals early on, we'll take points, but at the same time, we need to be able to finish those drives. And so, yeah, we need to play better. A little frustrating at times. I think, you know, I'll be able to look at this film and get a lot better from it.
Is it more joy or relief for the Browns tonight?
That's a great question. I don't even think I know the answer to that. I think we're just happy to get a win. I think we're happy to, you know, we came out and had a terrible home opener, and you know, everyone was talking about us, and Coach Freddie was just talking about how we're going to see what kind of team we are after this, and who's really going to ride with you. And you know, we didn't play our best game, but we hung in there. We fought. We made the plays we needed, and we seen sparks and glimpses of what this team could be. Now we have to get right back to it.
I got to tell you, if you listen to both those guys and probably the rest of the locker room, you know, you might not know if they won or lost, just sort of where the mood is, and that's because they didn't come out and play a great game. Should the Browns be encouraged by their win over the Jets last night?
They should. All NFL games are hard, but when you look at what they were facing, starting quarterback of the Jets not there. Okay, now their backup, Trevor Siemian, he's in. I believe that he broke his leg or fractured his ankle. In that play with Myles Garrett. He's not there. Bringing a guy who doesn't have any experience and to not be able to score more points on that defense without C.J. Mosley in the middle out, without the young kid from Alabama, Quentin Williams there. No, they should be disappointed. That's why their message was tempered. But, yes, they played off in week number 1. They were able to get a win on Monday Night Football. They're 1-1 at this point in the season. They have to get drastically better. If there's thing I'm concerned about, they're with that offensive line. That offensive line, the last half of last season, they played tremendous football. And when they don't play tremendous football, when they don't have a consistent running game, which they haven't had this year, Baker Mayfield is going to be affected by it. His stats are affected by it. But Baker Mayfield is a very accurate quarterback. You still have to remember with the wide receiving core with OBJ, there's some chemistry things that are going to be worked out. But, yes, this was a win for them. They should have won the game. It was almost impossible for them to be able to lose the game given the injuries and everything that the Jets have faced. But I like their comments. I liked it because you like them to be able to steady their voice and everything. You'd like them not to be as up and as down as they are. But I talked to OBJ before the game, and mentally, he's in a good spot. And Jenna, he's doing everything that I'm telling him to do. I was like, man, if you're going to wear a dang on watch out there, at least wear one for $1 million or something. He was like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm wearing one for $2 million out there. So he told me he was going to play well. His body is not to 100% yet. He's still having some problems with his hip. But overall, where he is psychologically, He likes the locker room. He likes the feel of this team, and it resulted in him having a tremendous performance last night.
No matter what the Jets' quarterback situation was going into the game or was once we got into the game, this was a must-win game for the Cleveland Browns. If they had lost to the New York Jets, whether it was Sam Darnold, Trevor Siemian, or Luke Falk playing quarterback, you are on level 10 panic alert for the Browns in their season, particularly given their upcoming schedule, which I know we can get into later in the show. And so they had to win this football game. And I would argue one side of the ball played an A-level game. No matter who the quarterback is, the defense played as well as you can play. We're not discounting the Patriots' defensive performances from the first 2 weeks of the year because they played inferior competition. That defense was exceptional. And on the offensive side of the ball, one player was exceptional for Cleveland, Odell. There are 2 A-plus 5 out of 5 star players, not that we project are going to be, but right now in the NFL on the Browns roster. Myles Garrett and Odell Beckham Jr. And yesterday they were both exceptional.
Yes.
Myles Garrett wrecked the game from the very beginning. Unfortunately, one of his hits did result in Trevor Siemian's ankle being broken, but he was in the backfield whooping Kelvin Beachum the entire night. And Beckham, from the first drive of the game, when he had just a spectacular one-handed catch that we've been showing, to late in the game when he had the longest score of his career and just a vintage Odell play from his Giants days, which is a very basic pass. It goes 6 yards in the air, and then he does all the work, where he topped out at, we were talking before the show, nearly 22 miles per hour as the Jets safety May had, I don't know what angle he's taking, but it's the wrong one, and Odell absolutely streaks down the field. This was your 2 best players, played 2 great games. You got a win you needed. Now, Baker's got to play better. Baker missed some shots. Baker took some shots, and I thought they put Baker in jeopardy more than they needed to late in the game when the game was iced the moment Odell scored that touchdown. They didn't need to throw another pass the rest of the game. They called a pass play at 2:05 left, up 20, that Baker got sacked on. Stuff like that needs to be cleaned up as they're figuring out what's going on in their offensive line. But maybe it wasn't the prettiest win, but it was a wildly necessary win for the Cleveland Browns.
So if you look at this roster, if you look at the various units on the team, which unit concerns you the most? Where do they go back to the drawing board and say, this is where we really need to shore up?
Well, you got to be concerned about the offensive line. And Baker Mayfield last year, down the stretch of the season, they kept Baker clean. I played 9 games, only had 7 sacks in those 9 games. He's been sacked 8 times in his first 2 games. And it's made his performance suffer. And the other thing with Baker Mayfield has that gunslinger mentality, a lot like Brett Favre. One of the biggest differences between Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers are the interceptions. It's not that much different. The passing percentage, it's the interceptions going the other way. And Baker Mayfield has that going since week number 4. He's thrown 18 interceptions from last year, which leads the NFL. So if you get him hit and he continues to turn the football over, it's going to be a problem. But Nick had mentioned the defense is only going to get better. I'm not in a panic, but I do have concern, though, with that offensive line.
And the other thing for the Browns, big picture, as good as they were at the end of last season, the one asterisk that would be attached to it was the way the schedule fell. They didn't play a lot of really good teams. Since Baker's taken over as the quarterback, they were 1-5 last year against teams that finished with a winning record. Their next 5 games: Rams, Ravens, Niners, Seahawks, Patriots. You know what all 5 of those teams have in common? None of them have lost. So their next 5 games are all against 2-0 teams. This is a stretch of the season where if they can get through it 3-2, they'll be thrilled. If they 2-3, they would probably take, because the back half of the schedule is so much easier and where they can pile up some wins. But this next 6 weeks, because there's a bye mixed in there, could define their year.
And look at those defenses that offensive line is going to be facing. If Aaron Donald's healthy, Baltimore, you saw what they were doing to Kyler Murray and going down the line.
New England at the back end.
Yes, it's going to be a tough stretch.
And we talked about how they'll deal with adversity. Well, this next stretch of the schedule could be a good way for them to see how they're able to handle it and how they will deal with it if they start losing. All right, coming up, has Big Ben played his last snap as a Pittsburgh Steeler? That's next on FS1. You can always check us out on the Fox Sports channel. That's on Sirius XM. We'll be right back. Are you ready for what's ahead? You can't always predict the future, but you can game plan for it. Generations of families and businesses have harnessed the power of Pacific to help them reach their unique goals. Whether you need to save money, to meet your needs, ensure your family is protected, or make sure you don't run out of money? Pacific Life has a variety of financial solutions that can help. Pacific Life counts more than half of the 100 largest U.S. companies as its clients and has been named one of the 2019 World's Most Ethical Companies by the Ethisphere Institute. Protecting what matters most to people for 150 years and counting? That's the power of Pacific. Ask a financial professional about how Pacific Life can help you game plan for your future. Or visit www.pacificlife.com. Welcome back. We'll get to Ben Roethlisberger's injury update in a second, but first, Monday Night Football, Browns, Jets. Le'Veon Bell catching a short pass makes one guy miss, hurdles over another for a 17-yard gain.
Jenna, I know you left that game saying, okay, we talked about L. Bell a lot last year, but he's nice with it. He's a good football player.
Man, he was the only weapon they had.
The only one.
And he still found a way to give you 120 yards from scrimmage in a game where no one could do anything for the Jets.
All right, well, this guy did something for the Browns. OBJ pulling a sensational one-handed catch with Jets defenders all over him.
He's got amazing hands. He practices it all the time, spends a lot of time at it. He works on his overall hand strength. He just does that Jerry Rice drill with the bricks and everything. Remember we had it on the show, the video. Tremendous wide receiver. Ready to have a really good season. His body's feeling good. And with Baker Mayfield, the way he can throw the ball, Nick, they should continue to be special.
Hang on. Odell wasn't done. Fourth quarter, turns a 9-yard pass into an 89-yard touchdown, reached speeds up to 21.7 miles an hour on this play.
Oh, yeah, he's a little injured. The free safety was the only one on the field, but Odell took away the angle. That's the reason why he cut back on him. He wasn't going to get into a foot race because watch, the safety has the angle on him. And then, let me eat that angle up.
And the safety can't change directions quickly enough. Got no shot
he can't flip his hips.
Greg Williams likes having those safeties line up 18 to 20 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and this is what it's trying to prevent. But when you're an athlete like Odell, you're drawing dead with that much open space in front of him.
All right, moving on. So the worst-case scenario has officially unfolded for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger will have surgery on his right elbow and will miss the remainder of the season. Ben released a statement saying, "This is shocking and heartbreaking for me to miss this much of a season and feel like I'm letting down so many people. I can only trust God's plan, but I'm completely determined to battle through this challenge and come back stronger than ever next season. The Steelers committed 3 years to me this offseason, and I fully intend to honor my contract and reward them with championship-level play. I feel in my heart I have a lot left to give." All right, Nick. What does the future hold for Big Ben? Have we seen the last of him in Pittsburgh?
I don't think we've seen the last of him in Pittsburgh. I take him at his word that he's going to try to come back and honor his contract, and the Steelers then will honor the $30-ish million per year they owe him going forward over the next 2 seasons after this year on that contract. I do think that when Big Ben's done playing, we will say the last playoff game Ben Roethlisberger ever played in was that shocking home defeat to the Jacksonville Jaguars after the Steelers' 13-3 season in 2017. I think that while Ben is planning on coming back, the team he comes back to is going to be one of the least talented teams he's ever played for, just like the team he's on right now is one of the least talented teams he's ever played for. Big Ben will be age 38. He turns 38 in March. Only 17 quarterbacks in league history have even started a season at that age or older. And I think you were seeing already, admittedly very early parts of the season, a deterioration in his play that you would not expect to all of a sudden jump in the other direction after an injury. And lastly, Big Ben is not Tom Brady and he is not Drew Brees when it comes to health, nutrition, working out.
You could throw Eli and probably Phillip Rivers in there too, who both take care of
Absolutely.
themselves.
And now Big Ben has had a playing weight that has fit his playing style. He's a rugged quarterback. He takes hits. He shakes off hits. He's a warrior in the pocket, all those things. But a guy like that's going to now be away from football longer than he's been at any point in his life. A guy who 2 years ago was contemplating retirement. The idea that he's going to attack this rehabilitation with the vigor he would have at 25, I don't see it. And so it's devastating for the Steelers. He's saying all the right things, but I think the best days of Big Ben are behind him. And I think the Steelers as a Super Bowl contender with Big Ben as their quarterback, the chapter got closed on that, or the book got closed on that midway through the second quarter. But you do think
he's coming back to rejoin the team?
Oh, I don't think he's going to retire. I believe him that he's going to play again. I just don't think the team's going to be good enough or he's going to be good enough.
Yeah, I disagree with you, and it's impossible to get to where Ben is in his football career and everything that he's been through. Remember he was in that bad motorcycle accident?
Yep.
And I've seen Ben play hurt so much. So to me, what you're saying about the other quarterbacks and everything is true. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Eli, these guys are in tremendous shape. But none of those guys are the athlete Ben Roethlisberger is. None of them have the talent Ben Roethlisberger does. If you ask all of them, and they were telling the truth, Tom Brady, hey, man, would you rather take Ben Roethlisberger's tools? And Tom's won a lot in everything. He'd been like, yes, his physical skills, as big as he is, as nimble as he is in the pocket, he can throw a ball any type of way you want to. We talk about Patty Mahomes varying the speed. Tell me what Ben Roethlisberger can't do. Throw it to the flat, throw it across the middle, intermediate, put some loft on it, bomb someone deep down the middle. He can make every type of throw. He's been in every type of game, and the guy's got heart. You don't get to where he is and play the way he's played unless you have a big heart. And this will be one of the biggest challenges of his career. And it's not about being in shape. He don't have to go out and take over this whole new regiment, all of a sudden become a vegan and everything. Hey, Cam Newton went out. Cam's in great shape. Cam can't throw the ball, so the nutrition part don't have nothing to do with throwing the ball. And that's all we want Ben to do, unless you think he's going to come back doing the read option or something. But I believe that Ben Roethlisberger will respond to this. Yes, he did talk about retirement a couple years ago, but obviously he made a recommitment to football. And the Pittsburgh organization, it's hard for me to believe over the next 3 years they won't be in the playoffs. If they get their defense fixed, they'll be back in the playoffs. Their wide receiver coach, Ray Sherman, he'll get those guys fixed. If they give him 1 year in free agency, there's a bunch of veteran players that know Ray Sherman, know his reputation. They'll come there and play in Pittsburgh for less money. It's not Tommy John surgery. I believe Ben bounces back because all that fitness and everything, it doesn't matter when you have the type of skill set. And it speaks to what type of talent that Ben does. You would have to go down a whole bunch of quarterbacks, the ones that are older, until you get to Aaron Rodgers and say, who has more talent than Ben Roethlisberger?
Right.
None of those other guys do. The only one's got more arm talent is Aaron Rodgers.
What about the state of the team? Do you think where the team is will affect whether he comes back or how quickly he comes back?
Well, I think we can. I'm almost ready to just put aside the idea that he won't come back. I don't think you release that statement and have the contract that he just signed and
so
the dollars.
So it doesn't affect him at all. They could have an atrocious
well, I think
season
because if they have an atrocious season, I think it will be attributed, even if it's unfair, simply to him not being there.
Right.
Now, you guys know I was skeptical on them even with him. But now, if they go 5-11, people will say, I think a lot of people will say, well, yeah, of course. I mean, you lost your starting quarterback. What do you expect? You lost a quarterback who's been there. They've never had a losing record the entire time he's been the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The only losing record the Steelers have had this century was the year before he got there, which allowed them to draft him in the middle of the first round, 14th pick or whatever it was, 11th pick out of Miami, Ohio. So, no, I don't think he's coming back. I believe him on that. Now, are they going to have the same GM? Are they going to have the same coach? What type of team are they going to have? We know they're not going to have a first-round pick this year because of the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. Instead, they're going to have him replacing the first-round pick, which will go to your point about upgrading the defense, second-year player out of Alabama. But, no, I believe he's coming back. I just don't think this team has enough talent to offset a coming-off injury, deteriorated Ben Roethlisberger. Cris obviously disagrees.
Yeah, well, what team could recover from losing 3 superstars in less than 2 years? L. Bell, free agency, gone. A.B. shot himself out, yelled himself out of the building. Ben Roethlisberger hurt. When they start looking to the short future, Ben Roethlisberger is going to be a part of that, all right? They will get their defense fixed. If they get their defense fixed, that is the key, because then coming back, you don't have to put all that pressure on Ben to throw for 5,000. When Ben comes back, though, I can guarantee you're going to throw for 4,000 yards next year. They will get other wide receivers. Dante Moncrief, as I told people, I'm glad Twitter found out, but I've been telling them since the preseason, he is not the answer. He is not a number 2 receiver. Don't make him a bad person, but he is not the answer opposite of James Washington and Juju Smith-Schuster. So I do believe Ben will come back, and I don't believe that the nutrition and all those things have anything to do with the heart. And when it's a guy decides that he wants to be able to do something, he doesn't have to change much of his regimen. All he's got to do is listen to his physical therapist. All right? Ben Roethlisberger is one quarterback in the offseason. That last game, when he takes his cleats off, a lot of times he used to tell other quarterbacks, first time he's putting them back on is when they go to training camp. It's because he is that gifted. People might say, oh, he's lazy. We have had people in sports like that. We got Koepka, the golfer. He don't practice a whole bunch right now. He's dominating the PGA Tour. The guy's gifted. You might not like it. You might not be your cup of tea. Jenna, of course, the eating regimen and all that, would he be better? Yes, he would. But he doesn't have to, and it just speaks of how talented he is.
All right, the big news this morning, Ben Roethlisberger is done for the season. Steelers are 0-2, so we shall see what lies ahead for the organization. Coming up, can the Saints stay in the playoff hunt until Drew Brees returns? That's next on First Things First.
Hiring can be a slow process. Cafe Altura's COO, Dylan Miskowitz, needed to hire a director of coffee for his organic coffee company, but he was having trouble finding qualified applicants. So he switched to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its technology identifies people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job, so you get qualified candidates fast. Dylan posted his job on ZipRecruiter and said he was impressed by how quickly he had great candidates apply. He also used ZipRecruiter's candidate rating feature to filter his applicants so he could focus on the most relevant ones. And that's how Dylan found his new director of coffee in just a few days. With results like that, it's no wonder why 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. See why ZipRecruiter is effective for businesses of all sizes. Try ZipRecruiter for free at our web address, ZipRecruiter.com/approach. That's ZipRecruiter.com/APPROACH. ZipRecruiter.com/approach. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
Let's go viral. Check this out from the warm-ups before last night's Monday Night Football game. Defensive end Myles Garrett showing he could throw as well. That is a 50-yard spiral. Jets could have used him at quarterback last night.
That's impressive, man. This guy is a freak. 6'5", what's he, 280?
Jenna, did you see Myles Garrett? Did you see him in ESPN, the magazine?
I did.
Did you see that? Oh, that's must see.
And do you know that they interviewed him and they said, are there any problem areas, any part of your body you don't like? He goes, I could probably do a little better on my obliques. And you saw how incredible his body looked. He's so dialed in to his physique and his conditioning. It is outstanding. I mean, I just look at it for the articles. That's why I read the body issue.
Jenna, you've never been more interested in anything we've ever talked about on this show.
I got to live.
For you saying I really enjoyed the article.
Jenna tried to go with the old Playboy magazine.
It was a TV interview, too.
Was it a TV interview?
Yeah, I think it was a TV interview.
No idea.
You saw it. You didn't read it.
The body issue?
Oh, I think she did all the above.
I have that issue at home.
Let's see, if there's one thing right now Jenna's an expert on, it's the naked athletes that come out in a magazine.
You got an eyeful. Myles Garrett, his body. OBJ looks good, too. You like him with that haircut, right?
I think he is.
Oh, yeah.
I like the look. I like the look.
Okay.
He's a cutie.
Okay.
Stories to start your morning. Browns taking on the Jets. Monday Night Football. Here we go. Odell, the cutie. Clear-cut star last night. Finished with 6 catches, 161 yards, and a career-long 89-yard touchdown. Browns win 23-3 over the Jets. All right, CC, how impressive was OBJ last night?
Very impressive. I talked to him before the game. He was ready. He was looking forward to it. I mean, he likes playing in Giants Stadium. Of course, that was the home turf there of the Giants, but I felt like he was going to play good. They've had a DB problem there with the Jets, so I thought he would have the big game. It was nice that he was able to get the big touchdown late to be able to finish it off, but he's looking to have a spectacular season. Told him he's in the right place. You know, the watch thing. I told him, don't wear a watch, man, unless you're going to wear one for $1 million.
So he wore one for $2 million. But he didn't wear it during the game. And, by the way, there were a couple things in this game that I think previously might have derailed Odell mentally, where right after he makes this big play, the refs make him go off the field in the red zone on a key third down when the game is it's 0-0. Game's still in the balance. He was upset for a moment, then gathered himself. And right here, after Greg Williams did the Odell Who stuff, and there was that back and forth this week, he didn't do anything towards the sideline. He didn't make any pointed gestures to where that is controversial today, overshadowing how brilliant he was. He reminded the whole world why some people say he's the best receiver in the NFL.
On to the Steelers now. Ben Roethlisberger will undergo season-ending elbow surgery. Big Ben vowed in a statement to, quote, come back stronger than ever next season. Cris, what does the future hold for Roethlisberger?
Oh, I believe he's going to make a comeback. The dude's got heart. Man, he has shown that throughout his career. This is a hurdle, but that's what the greatest athletes do. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks that's ever played the position. Tremendous athlete. People would talk about, well, he's not a hard worker and everything. He's gifted. And every once in a while, we have people that come along. They don't have the most tremendous work ethic as far as preparation. Now, the mentals, the X's and O's, he's got that. But no, he's not Drew Brees. He's not Tom Brady. But he's a lot better athlete than them. I expect him to overcome this injury.
It's good for the Steelers, I suppose, that he's saying he's coming back and he's going to try to come back full strength. I happen to think that we're going to look back and say the last playoff game Ben Roethlisberger ever played in was that shocking defeat at the hand of Blake Bortles and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sometimes it happens real quick. And this is one of the reasons why guys can list the missed opportunities, because that year as a whole was a missed opportunity for the Steelers. I wonder if they'll ever be on the precipice of a championship again with him as the quarterback.
When do we see Big Ben in the body issue? Next year, probably the year after next?
No.
Okay, different
When
body.
they're trying to go out of business, they're trying to send the people to the refrigerator.
Sticking with the Steelers now, they traded their 2020 first-round pick to the Dolphins for safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, the 11th overall pick in last year's draft, who asked the Dolphins to trade him last week. Nick, what do you make of this move?
This was shocking to me. Now, Minkah has enormous value because he's only in year 2, so he's still on the very cheap part of his rookie deal, and he's better than a first-round pick because he's proven. He's a first-round pick that you know is good. So unlike other first-round picks, it's a lottery. I'm shocked Pittsburgh, though, is the team that made the trade after they found out about Ben's injury, because this could be a top 5 pick that they could have used potentially on a quarterback to reboot this thing when Ben is done. They obviously do not want to reboot, take this year off to a degree, and then try to compete for a championship again with Big Ben with an improved defense. But I was shocked that the Steelers are the team that made this trade after they found out Ben's done for the year.
Yeah, I'm glad he asked for a trade because this is the kid who's done everything the right way. He's a Jersey kid, 5-star, decides to go to Alabama. Nick Saban calls him one of the best players he's ever played for him, one of the most mature players. He's one of the few players, too, to ever get out of Alabama without an injury. He's young. He's better than a first-round pick, not only because he's proven, Nick, but they've given the most important part of the contract to him already. That's the signing bonus. Yeah. You don't have to give him a bonus. He only turns 23 in November. Yeah, there's not a kid in college football that is as good as him. Absolutely not. So I like the trade by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I like the demands of the player. If you're going to decide to tank, first time we've seen a team tank, the guy should ask to be out of there because it is not safe to be a Miami Dolphin. Football is the ultimate team sport, and if I can't depend on the talent level, the guy next to me, I don't need to be there. I'm glad he got out of there.
Speaking of guys who want to get out, Jalen Ramsey may not be a Jag much longer. That after he and head coach Doug Marrone got into a heated sideline exchange in Jacksonville's loss Sunday to the Texans. Now reports are Ramsey has requested a trade out. The Jags are looking for at least one first-round pick. All right, CC, what do you make of this whole situation?
Jalen, I wish we didn't see the sideline incident because you don't want to see something like that as far as the head coach and one of the star players. But with Jacksonville and how they have that team built, this was a combustible situation, and it just boiled over in the game. Jalen hadn't been happy there in Jacksonville with a number of situations there. In Jacksonville, how they're going to run their overall team, what kind of team they're going to put on the field. I don't believe that everyone should be able to demand a trade. But if we're not happy, we're not getting along. Tom Coughlin seems like he's got security there. I don't know how the coach could have any type of security. Jalen Ramsey, Pro Football Focus had him before the season, number 2 corner. They're not going to sign him to a long-term deal. They decided not to do that, not to exercise that. So if you draft a guy and he has played well, and it's hard to say that you can draft a kid who's going to play better in his first 4 years than Jalen's played. He is supremely talented. He has unusual length. He is unusually large, fast for a corner. He can play off in man. He can play off in zone. He can bump and run. He's tough. He has the temperament. He likes the game of football. So it's not working there. You decide not to exercise the option. It's time for him to get paid and get some security. So he had to be able to force his way out because him and the head coach are not seeing eye to eye.
This is where it can be so frustrating if you're a fan of a team or just a fan of the league, because it feels like some teams in the perpetual rebuild, I don't want to say they're running a con because that's not what it is, but it can feel like that. Because, okay, so now you're going to trade Jalen Ramsey for a first-round pick and something in the hopes of what? Getting a player 80% as good as Jalen Ramsey? Like, it's why not paying him was, to me, so indefensible. Because you can't say, oh, well, the reason we didn't pay him is we're not trying to win this year. No, you went out and paid Nick Foles. You kept Calais Campbell.
Right.
You kept a lot of your defense.
So why do you think they didn't pay him?
I think it was. I happen to think their general manager has an older school mentality than is going to work in the modern NFL. Jalen is a brash guy. Jalen's contract is not up, and so he said, "Why would I pay you?" But it's because that top 5 of the draft. Number 1, Jared Goff has been paid. Number 2, Carson Wentz has been paid. Number 4, Ezekiel Elliott's been paid. He's been as good or better than any of them. He's never missed a game. He's been first-team All-Pro. Joey Bosa is the one who hasn't been paid, but he's dealt with injuries, and the Chargers run a different type of financial organization than almost any team in the league.
Yeah, no doubt.
As far as what his trade value is going to be, that Laramie Tunsil trade might have skewed the marketplace for everybody because he's the same draft class as Jalen, so on the same pay scale as far as when he would need to get his next big contract. He went for 2 firsts and a second. Now, I happen to think the Texans overpaid in that instance, but if you're Jacksonville, you're saying, okay, who's going to give us 2 firsts and a second? I don't know if that deal is going to be out there, but he's going to get moved. They set that into motion when they decided this offseason not to pay the most productive, most available, best player on their team this offseason.
And important to know, this didn't stem just from the one sideline altercation with Doug Marrone. For the casual fan who was watching, this wasn't a player who got into one argument and said, I want out. Let's move on to the Saints now. Drew Brees will reportedly have surgery on his thumb after tearing a ligament in Sunday's loss to the Rams. The surgery would sideline him approximately 6 weeks, but Sean Payton says Brees will seek a second opinion. Nick, assuming Brees is out for an extended period of time, how does this Saints offense change? Because the assumption is it's going to have to. Teddy Bridgewater is a different quarterback than Drew Brees.
Well, exactly right. And even if Teddy is the best backup quarterback in football, that would mean he's what, better than 5 or 6 starting quarterbacks, so around 25th, 26th best quarterback in football at a minimum. And Cris can expand on probably far better than I can about the X's and O's about how the offense will change, the different type of routes they're going to have to run, the different types of protections, because even though Drew Brees is not known as the strongest arm quarterback in football, he has a stronger arm than Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater, the reason you could have the efficiency he had at Louisville and be the last pick of the first round, the reason people could question if you were going to be a first-round pick after that great college career, it's because he's got something of a pop gun arm. And that's before he dealt with the devastating leg injury and everything that's gone on since then.
And the pop gun arm is?
A very weak arm. Okay. I mean, just instead of a bazooka arm or whatever, a pop gun.
Compared to a shotgun.
Exactly.
And 9 millimeters.
No, my gun.
No problem. And so, but I do want to, for the Saints, because there has been an element of, I think, overdone optimism. about them dealing with no Brees because everyone likes Teddy and everyone's rooting for Teddy. And so the point I want to make is this. If they went from Drew Brees to Matt Ryan, they'd be what, 1 or 2 wins worse? And if they went from Drew Brees to Matt Stafford, they'd be 3 or 4 wins worse? And if they went from Drew Brees to Derek Carr, they'd be what, 4 or 5 wins worse? So Drew Brees to Teddy Bridgewater, who is he on that scale? Is he Derek Carr? Probably not. Maybe at best. So even if you replace Brees with a guy that we know is a good starting quarterback in this league, like a Matt Ryan, your team is going to be worse. Can they tread water? Can they survive? Probably. But see, they're going to have to drastically change the way Sean Payton calls these games, right?
I think in answering that, could you also sort of give the audience an idea of what makes Teddy Bridgewater special? It's been a number of years since we've actually seen him be a starter and shine.
Yes.
Who knows if he still has, but why is he such a great quarterback? Why was he such a great quarterback?
Teddy's always been a great leader. He's from Miami area. We played against him in high school. He's always been a guy that kids look to. He always does the right things, says the right things. He leaves South Florida because in his recruitment, he wasn't a 5-star. And there were better prospects out there. Guys had better bodies than him, guys that had bigger arms than him. That's why he goes to Louisville. He's got a good career there. And then he started going through, man, is this guy good enough to be a franchise quarterback? The Vikings took him. He ends up winning that starting job eventually. But the way that team was built, that was Adrian Peterson's team.
Yes.
Those were some of the greatest years we ever seen a running back take a franchise on its back. And I'm talking about carry them. Teddy should have on his resume a playoff win, but the kicker blew a short kick. If he had that on his resume, I think people would look at things different. But we can't make things up just because we like people. Now, you mentioned all those other quarterbacks. What would they be? We don't know what they would be with Sean Payton because Drew Brees wouldn't be Drew Brees without the Sean Payton in everything. So anytime that we would take who I call the most accurate quarterback, and also the football statisticians say the most accurate quarterback, who wouldn't be a drop-off? I mean, besides Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, everyone be a drop-off. Everyone, every formula you did be like, well, that guy's accurate. Drew Brees, his greatness is his anticipation, him knowing every defensive look and being in the system. Teddy does not have the same anticipation, doesn't have the same arm strength. So Sean Payton, we're relying on his genius to be able to create. He's got to change this offense. They got to be more run-oriented, and when they want to throw the ball deep, man, they have to be more play action, and they have to run double moves on the outside because Teddy doesn't have the type of arm strength that can just pierce defenses, throw down the seam, throw down the rails and everything. So it becomes very important with the creativity. We're going to see with Sean Payton, what kind of team does he create? Because what they used to run, it is not Teddy's sweet spot. But I believe that Sean, being a former quarterback, he will cater to Teddy's strengths and will create some things that Teddy can play at a high level, the highest level his ability can play at now.
And listen, let's say that the doctors are right and he's going to miss 6 games. After the 6 games from now, they have a bye, so you could give him essentially 7+ weeks. Those 6 games are at Seattle, home for Dallas, home for Tampa, at Jacksonville, at Chicago, home for Arizona. You can say, all right, they can go 3-3. And they could. You beat Tampa, you beat Jacksonville, you beat Arizona. There's a path to 3-3 right there. At 4-4 with Brees coming back, is your season over? Absolutely not. Your season's not over. And in that division where Carolina hasn't won yet, where Tampa's 1-1, Atlanta's 1-1, yeah, you could say 4-4 still be alive for the division. But the Saints this year, the goal, of course, and the realistic goal was going to the Super Bowl. And they have only been, since as great as Brees and Payton have been, since they've been together, they've only been to the conference championship, forget the Super Bowl, conference championship 3 times. All 3 of those seasons, they had a bye. All 3 of those seasons, they had either the 1 or the 2 seed and home field advantage either all the way through the playoffs or the 2nd seed in the conference. At 4-4, you're not getting to a bye. And so now all of a sudden their path would be 3 playoff games, going on the road, some things they don't have a history of success of in New Orleans as far as going on deep playoff runs.
The Saints are very fortunate over the last several years. They are one of the few franchises that, yes, they do have Super Bowl aspirations. But Super Bowl aspirations don't come with other minor goals along the way. Yes, you'd love to have the bye. No one calculates that in there, though, Nick. Everyone says, we got to make the playoffs. Well, if I have to make it as a wild card, okay, we have seen people take that route to the Super Bowl. So when Drew Brees comes back, their goals will still be on the table, and that's to get into tournament. That's either by wild card, by winning division. It does not matter. But Drew Brees can go in any stadium and be able to win. We have seen that, and they have the overall experience that would have them ready to take that next step, given what they faced in the playoffs the last 2 years.
I think it's funny that you said everyone in the organization is really, optimistic, and yet there's Sean Payton is like, well, let's get a second opinion.
Oh, well, yeah.
We might need a third or a fourth opinion. Wait, he's not done quite yet.
This guy's
going to
finish his career with first or second place in every major passing category. He's one of the all-time greatest players. Going to miss him for 6 weeks. Big deal. All
right, take a break. Coming up, did the Browns show everyone they are a playoff caliber team with their win last night, or did they not? That's ahead on First Things First. Back here, First Things First with Eric Mangini. Hey, Coach.
Good morning.
Welcome to Tuesday.
Thanks. Good to be here.
What's up, C?
How are you, C?
I was just telling funny stories during the break.
Coach was talking about getting punked on the sideline.
Said, not about him getting punked on the sideline, but coaches
happen.
can't let it happen. I'm talking about Jalen Ramsey.
No punking last night. Monday Night Football starring the Jets and the Browns.
Jets kind of got punked, Jenna.
The Jets got punked?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. Well, that happened when the season started. And while the Browns didn't exactly blow away a depleted Jets team, OBJ played great in his return to New York. An amazing one-handed catch we saw, then this, his first touchdown as a Brown, a career-long 89-yard score, finished with 6 catches for 161 yards. Browns win 23-3. They improved to 1-1 in the season, but Baker Mayfield knows there is much more work to be done.
Not losing sight of that a win is a win, especially on the road, and we needed this one. But, field goals early on, we'll take points, but at the same time, we need to be able to finish those drives. And so, yeah, we need to play better. A little frustrating at times. I think, I'll be able to look at this film and get a lot better from it.
Is it more joy or relief for the Browns tonight?
That's a great question. I don't even think I know the answer to that. I think we're just happy to get a win. I think we're happy to, we came out and had a terrible home opener, and everyone was talking about us, and Coach Freddie was just talking about how we're going to see what kind of team we are after this, and who's really going to ride with you. And we didn't play our best game, but we hung in there. We fought. We made the plays we needed, and we seen sparks and glimpses of what this team could be. Now we have to get right back to it.
It was a good question. Should the Browns feel more joy or more relief after getting the win? But look who the win was over. Should the Browns be encouraged, though, at least by picking up the W last night, Coach?
Yeah, they should be encouraged. I mean, they didn't have the most penalties since 1951. And that's a real good starting point.
Yeah, Coach.
They were only in the top 10 with 9 penalties, so that's a positive. And they beat the Jets, which is, on their third-string quarterback. Now, that guy did like men. Luke Falk can go 20 for 25 for a 98 quarterback rating. That's pretty good for being on the practice squad, never being active for a game, walking into a game and having a higher quarterback rating than Baker. So, yeah, there's a lot of things to be encouraged by. They were able to get out of it with the win. Odell was productive on the slant, a 3-yard pass that they missed a tackle and he went for 98. I'm sure
89.
Or 89. You're putting him in the Hall of Fame.
Oh no, best receiver in the game.
Is that what?
Yeah,
it was?
he kind of said it a little.
This is a coach.
The thing that's encouraging is they have tempoed down the constant hype and the expectations and all that stuff came back crashing to earth. They need to improve the penalties. That has got to get better. They're not going to be in a situation like they were week in and week out. They go on a really tough stretch here, and if they don't play much better, consistent football, they're going to have real problems. And that means controlling turnovers, controlling penalties, controlling self-inflicted wounds, controlling egos, and controlling what they can control.
So a couple things. One is, I know you were tongue planted firmly in cheek with your initial analysis of at least, particularly on the penalties. One point of clarification should be noted. They had 9 penalties. 2 of those were intentional. They were where they was try to draw you off sides, take the delay of game. So they went from 18 penalties to really 7 penalties in the football game, which is improvement. 7's probably 6 more than you would find.
But you can look at the week before,
acceptable.
And there were several penalties that were declined.
Absolutely.
If we're going to play that game.
But that's kind of my point is, so that last week, they could have actually had 20+. This week, they legitimately had 7. So that is improvement. And, I mean, we can find a way to minimize what Odell Beckham did yesterday. To me, that's an A-plus player who had an A-plus game. He started the game off with a brilliant catch that one of only maybe 3 human beings alive could make, and he ended the game with a play that, yeah, it is a 3-yard slant where a guy missed a tackle. A lot of guys miss tackles on 3-yard slants that don't end in 89-yard touchdowns because a player doesn't have the top-end speed that Odell Beckham has. And this was the play that iced the football game. Now, to your point that the Browns are far from a finished product, I thought some of the play calling late in the game was foolish. When you have a 20-point lead on a third-string quarterback, why Baker's dropping back when he's constantly under duress. He got sacked in a game with 2:05 left where you're up 20. You should never be sacked in that spot. You should never be passing in that spot. The offensive line, which, I know you're concerned about, was your biggest concern for them going into the year, continues to look leaky. But on the other side of the ball, you can't control what the talent level of your opposition is. But holding the opposition to 3 points is one tick away from the best you can possibly do defensively. So we have to give them credit there. And I said it earlier, I'll say it again. The Browns have 2 known quantity A-plus players. Beckham on one side, Myles Garrett on the other. And they both showed up in an enormous way yesterday in a game that, while it was ugly, they had to win. If they had lost to the Jets, no matter who the Jets quarterback is, and fallen to 0-2, especially with the schedule they have coming up, the sky would justifiably be falling in Cleveland. So it was a necessary win that they got rather easily.
Dennis Green used to tell me this all the time. And he was like, I expect my best players to play at their best in the toughest situations. And he said, I don't expect my best players to have mental mistakes and to have penalties. And it's not like people think, well, he just got 1 penalty. Well, it depends on when it was and who it is. Is it preventable? On 3rd down, when you get a penalty, it's a possession. It's the most important down in football. And the way Myles Garrett is going at it as far as roughing these passers, it's something that he's got to get better at. He could have 20 sacks this year, but you can't continue put your defensive teammates at risk because you're being selfish. He's a smart football player. You doesn't have to continue to lift the quarterback, dump the quarterback. Those are going to be called all the time. The refs watch the tape. So then you start to develop a reputation. In the first 2 weeks of the season, those 15-yard penalties on 3rd down, that when you start giving teams life like that, then other guys on the team say, well, he got one and I can get one. No. It's an immature football team. They're not used to winning. He's got to get better, and Baker's got to get better. Since week number 4 when he took over, last season he's thrown 18 interceptions, which leads the NFL. So forget about the rest of the team. I'm not going to, belittle Odell's accomplishments because it's really not the conversation. It's about, are they going to get to their goals? And if these 2 players don't play at their best, Myles Garrett, he should be considered for defensive MVP. He should be considered for getting 20 sacks this season, and Baker's got to be able to clean up the turnovers. I covered the game last week, and you have 2 guys in 2 different spectrums when we started the season. Baker, who we thought was a proven passer, and Lamar, who couldn't pass the football. And now where are they? I'm not going to say where they are, but the confidence that Lamar and the coaching staff have is totally different than what Baker and those interceptions being and being so turnover prone.
How much of what Baker's going through is on him, and how much of it is that offensive line?
Well, it's a little bit of both. And when you look at an offensive line, you have to look at where the quarterback is. And this happens all the time. The offensive line is anticipating you to be at a certain spot, and they block accordingly. When you start to move in the pocket, the D-line sees where the quarterback moves. The offensive line doesn't. So the defensive line gains an advantage if you move to the right or the left. That's why you see guys like Tom Brady or some more seasoned guys, they step up because it allows the offensive line to maintain their blocks. So, yeah, there is some component of the Browns' offensive line, but there's also some component of the quarterback. I thought last night, and look, I'm being a little bit hard on Cleveland. They did a great job stopping Le'Veon Bell. That was the first thing they had to do, okay? I did think that the Jets gave you a little bit more of a blueprint on how to confuse Baker. There was a lot of pre-snap disguise. There was a lot of times where the clock was running down because they couldn't quite figure out where to go with the ball. There was a lot of times where they went to like a quick slant because they expected pressure, but it wasn't that. So I think that's something that's going to be taken away. The backup quarterback component of this, the Luke Falk component of this, is a concern too. When a guy comes off the practice squad and goes 20 for 25 in a game, it's either there's some issues with the defense or, you know, maybe this guy's really good. He was drafted 199, the same exact spot as Tom Brady. Can I, maybe this is some great occurrence for the Jets.
Can I give you an alternative?
It shouldn't be those numbers.
A third option, which was other than concern or that he's really good. A lot of those completions, the Jets were in 3rd and 15 plus all night. And a lot of those completions were, it's 3rd and 17, and you want to throw it 8 yards, no problem. We're then going to rally to the ball. I mean, this is a Jets team that had negative 15 passing yards at halftime, and then the Browns were in something of a prevent defense the rest of the way. So, and 10 of those completions were to Le'Veon Bell, where the ball does not travel past the line of scrimmage. So, to me,
before Odell's touchdown, if the Jets had gone in and scored there, if they'd converted on that 4th and 2, you're actually in a game.
It's 16-10, and you're in a game.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You're in a real game.
But you do then to me, you
so
give
they're in prevent at that point.
Well, no. I shouldn't have. I'm not saying they were in prevent the whole second half. My point was on a lot of these 3rd and super longs, that's where the completions came, and they were in a modified prevent's probably not the right word for it, but whatever coverage you would call it.
Yeah, very soft coverage. I don't think the coaches in Cleveland left us and said, you know something, we got this all the way turned around.
Agreed.
There's still a bunch of holes. This is still a young football team. Baker's still a young football. Every time he goes out there, he's going to see something new. It's not like he's been playing 20 seasons. So they have to get better, and that's what that's the mentality. If they're looking for the easy way out, if they're making excuses, it will come up in the next previous months. But let's not. These first 4 games, extended training camp. Let's see after 2 more games if the offensive line's doing that, if Myles is still having penalties like that compared to sacks, because he has been playing some stellar football.
All right, take a break. Coach, stick around. Coming up, has Big Ben played his last snap in the NFL? That's next on
I can't wait for this one, Coach.
Back here at Coach Mangini talking Pittsburgh Steelers, where the worst-case scenario has officially unfolded for them. Ben Roethlisberger will have surgery on his right elbow and will miss the remainder of the season. So the third of the 3 Bs is now not playing this season. Ben released this. This is shocking and heartbreaking for me to miss this much of a season and feel like I am letting down so many people. I can only trust God's plan, but I am completely determined to battle through this challenge and come back stronger than ever next season. The Steelers committed 3 years to me this offseason, and I fully intend to honor my contract and reward them with championship-level play. I feel in my heart I have a lot left to give. All right, Coach, what does the future hold for Big Ben?
I'm a little torn on this, actually.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because I heard a statement, and I anticipate him wanting to come back and wanting to play and wanting to finish his career in the right way, and it's been an absolutely amazing career. But I think back to a couple of years ago where he was talking about, you know, I've been in the league for a long time, my body's hurt, retirement's always an option. When you start getting guys talking about retirement, it's real. It's a real consideration. And I think, okay, what if this season goes the way where the Steelers have horrible numbers?
4-12.
Yeah, whatever that is. Now they've traded away their first round draft pick, so it's not like they can go get some offensive firepower in the first round. And he's looking at a team that's a total rebuild. What if they decide to make a coaching change? There's so many things that can happen between now and when he's got to make that next decision. And when you look at the way that his contract's structured, his money is guaranteed. Half of his money is guaranteed for injury. So he'll still get $30 million over the next 2 years of his $60 million that I think it's $60 million. Those numbers are close.
No, you're right.
So he's got the chance to get that money. He's talked about retirement in the past. We don't know where this team is headed. They've given away their first-round draft pick because they're going to try to compete right now. A lot can change as he goes into this next offseason that can make him take a step back and say, a little bit like Andrew Luck, enough is enough.
So I would be shocked if Ben doesn't play next year. Now, I'd also be shocked if Ben, when he does come back, looks like the Ben Roethlisberger we've grown accustomed to, and the Steelers look like the Steelers we've grown accustomed to. I think that this year, even if he had stayed healthy, they were staring at their first losing season since he's been the quarterback of the team. Steelers have one losing season this century, and it was the year before Ben got there. They drafted Ben Roethlisberger after going 6-10. They go 15-1 that year, and they have not had a losing season since then. But I believe that Ben is going to come back and not try to just get 30, but try to get the full 60. I think he's not going to just play one more year. I think he's going to try to play 2 more years, which is what's left on his deal. And the Steelers clearly believe that, because you do not trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick if you think Ben is walking away.
Or they love Mason
at the
Rudolph.
End of this year. Or they love Mason Rudolph. And by the way, they liked Mason Rudolph enough to spend a decent draft pick on him, despite having the previous year spend a decent draft pick on Josh Dobbs, and despite the fact that, if you remember, Ben Roethlisberger was none too pleased about that Mason Rudolph draft pick.
What's the correlation between Minkah Fitzpatrick and Ben Roethlisberger?
Because
how do you equate those two?
If you're going, because if you think the quarterback might retire, you need that first-round pick to maybe draft a quarterback. Especially if you're going to have a terrible season. If you're going to be
well, if you have a quarterback that you like, you're going to go trade for a defensive player because you don't think this season is a throwaway. Obviously, they're going into this thinking, we've got a guy that's going to allow us to compete over the rest of the season.
Yes.
Now we got to go get another piece. I don't think they're looking at this saying, yeah, we're going to have to save that draft pick for another quarterback.
Well, I don't think they are either, clearly, but I think that if Ben had announced yesterday, let me ask you this real quick. If Ben had announced yesterday, I'm retiring, you think they still make that trade? Because I think there's 0% they make that trade.
No, I think they still would probably make that trade because you're 2 games into the season. Who wants to sit back at 2 games into the season? This is Pittsburgh. This isn't a team
We've never seen
that
what's
lays
going
down
on in Miami either. Let's not try to act like losing the NFL is acceptable. No, it's not acceptable. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're the one said they haven't had a losing season this century.
They've won this century.
Yeah, I mean, that right there would speak to what they're trying to do.
I think Ben's coming back, but I also think that his time as an elite quarterback and the Steelers' time as a championship contender with Ben Roethlisberger as their quarterback, it probably actually came to a close a year ago, but it officially came to a close when he left the field grabbing his elbow on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I tell people all the time in sports, there's a great tale of in the Bible of Daniel and the lion's den. People wonder if Daniel had courage before the lion got there, and typically you don't. Typically, you have the courage or you have the wherewithal to overcome something once it's there. Ben Roethlisberger, as far as his track record, Ben's always been one to maybe want a little more attention, maybe to say more about his injuries, maybe exaggerate, I'm going to be out, then he makes a comeback. I followed Ben his whole career. I've been in TV his whole career, and that's been Ben's reputation. Ben likes the attention. Maybe a couple years ago, he was like, you know something? Now that we know about AB, how difficult it was, maybe he was like, man, I got a lot of money in the bank. I don't need to keep coming to work listening to this, because veteran players, what becomes hard for them as they get older, the practices, how often, because they can't get to the level that they're used to as often as they're used to it, and the conversations in the locker room. Imagine how good Tom Brady has to be to keep his mind fresh with the young turnover that goes on in the NFL. Just imagine what type of mind tricks he would have to do. Imagine what he would have to do outside of their company to make sure that he has some type of balance. So for me, I believe all those things might be true to Ben Roethlisberger, but I'm going to give Ben credit for the heart that I've seen him playing. He's played like a gladiator in this game. He's been a warrior, and I believe that heart gets him over this obstacle. Now, none of us know ligament damage to your elbow, what it's going to do to Ben, but you don't have to be taking care of your body like Drew Brees and Tom Brady as far as can he overcome this? It has nothing to do with it.
Real quick, see, because I want to make sure I followed the analogy fully. So for you, the lion in the Daniel Lyons Den might be the elbow injury.
Yes.
That it's going to trigger something in Big Ben that we hadn't previously seen as far as...
Well, you haven't seen it in the version that you like.
Sure.
I've seen it.
Okay.
I've seen Baltimore have an all-out blitz. I seen Ray Lewis hit him right in his chin. Okay? I don't care if you're eating avocado ice cream. If you can take that punch, you're a warrior in this game, and I'm giving that dude credit. I'm not going to let people sit here and be like, oh, this guy is not tough. No, he's overcome tougher things than this. And I do believe that what him and AB were going through, it wore Ben out. And a couple years ago, that might have been the reason why he was talking about those types of things.
And I give Ben a ton of credit for being able to navigate through that environment. Tom Brady does have the benefit of a really disciplined environment with a lot of guys who have tremendous character. We all talk about the different families. And to your point, he is one of the toughest players that I've ever competed against, I've ever seen at that position. And I disagree that their championship window is gone. If he is on the field, if he is part of that organization,
you've always said
you have a chance to win a championship regardless of who else is there.
All right, Coach, we'll see you a bit later on in the show. Coming up, did Odell's career night prove he is the best in the league?
Coach ain't going to be out here for that? Oh, man.
We'll talk throughout the break.
Man.
Coach, where's Odell in your ranking? Top 5 receiver in the league?
I don't do the rankings.
Do the rankings.
Hey, OBJ made his long-awaited New York return last night. The Browns weren't spectacular in their win over the Jets, but Odell certainly was. Scored his first touchdown as a Brown. A career-long 89-yard score, finished with 6 catches, 161 yards. Browns improved to 1-1 with the win. Here's OBJ on his big night in the Big Apple.
I just want to be the very best that I can. I'm going to work as hard as possible to be the very best that I can for this team, be the leader that I'm supposed to be. Just trying to do better.
Baker, this week, New York's defensive coordinator suggested that Odell is not a dynamic playmaker. Do you feel like he showed otherwise tonight?
He said that? Oh, Jesus. That's next question. Not a dynamic football player. Okay.
I love that real-time reaction.
Sure.
That Baker hadn't seen what Greg Williams said.
What'd you make of what you saw from Odell last night?
It was a must-win for the Browns. But Odell's doing what he's got to do. I talked to him before the game, and regardless, last night with the visor, with another watch, I told him, man, if you're going to wear a watch, man, you want to impress me, wear one for $1 million. He's like, oh, I wear one for $2 million. So
and it was honestly worth $2 million.
The thing, and I know, Jenna, little things like that, as far as not obeying the rules and things, they make certain people, they irritate them. But Odell is one of those type of players, and in football, I've seen in locker rooms, you always have guys that they're going to always be a little bit different. And I don't mind that, but as long as he's trying to do the same things that the team is trying to do. And Odell is focused on having a tremendous season. He's got the best throwing quarterback he's ever had in his career. He loves playing with Jarvis Landry, one of his buddies, going way back to their days in Louisiana. So he's in a good headspace, and we should see that. Even though he's not 100%, last night in the game, we saw he got a little dehydrated. He has such low body fat that when he gets in games and he perspires so much that he cramps up a little bit. And that's what happened at the end of the first half. His hip's been bothering him, so he's still not 100%. As you can see on this quick slant here after the run read option that they ran. This is the same play that the Baltimore Ravens ran for Hollywood Brown. Only difference was against Miami, they were in man-to-man. This was against zone. It's a great play. Read options the opposite way, quick slant from the slot. And he pierces the defense, which this is what makes him special. Not only his releases off the line of scrimmage, but his ability to catch a ball anywhere on the field and to be able to score. I thought it was a good building block from. He was the best player for the Browns in week number 1.
Yep.
He was the best player for him in week number 2. I like the press conference. I like that his hair is the color that it is. I like the shave. I like the look. He looks professional. And I like he talked about leadership. See, when guys don't talk about leadership, They don't want to be leaders. And he used to say things about my teammates like me and things like that, but he didn't talk about being a leader with the Giants. So for me, that was more important than some of the other things. I think he's going to have a great year. And with Baker Mayfield, man, he's the type of quarterback that you want because he gets the ball to you quick and you can make yards after the catch with it.
And listen, people can make the argument, the foolish argument, I believe, that the receiver position, the great receiver is an overrated asset, and they can cherry pick the fact that some of the greatest receivers we've ever had in the history of this league, by happenstance and bad luck, didn't happen to win Super Bowls. But in week 2, the 2 best receivers in the NFL both made plays that they could make for their teams the way they did, that either won a game or iced a game. They're very similar. Julio on a jailbreak screen, catches the ball about 2 yards off line of scrimmage, and just is faster than everyone on the field. That was to win the game, a game they could have lost. This game was different. The Browns were in control, but to ice the game. Odell takes a quick slant and takes it 89 yards to the house. And we talk about how easy this game looked for the Browns and ended up being because the Jets were so limited offensively. But the Browns really only had 2 explosive offensive plays the whole game of note. Odell's one-handed catch to start the game and Odell's catch and run to essentially close out the game. And this is one of the reasons why, even though I understand so much of it is self-inflicted, the noise surrounding Odell can be frustrating is because on a per-game basis, he is as productive as any receiver in NFL history. That's not opinion, that's the fact. And so now he needs to be available, and the injuries the last couple years had been an issue. I was concerned somewhat this year when he had dealt with the hip injury preseason, but as we've seen through 2 weeks, he's been able to play through it. But the other thing that, if you're an Odell Beckham fan or a Browns fan, that is encouraging is there were a couple moments in this game where he could have gotten off track. When the referees picked a very odd time to realize his visor was the wrong color, right when they're in the red zone, right when they're facing a 3rd and goal, Odell was furious, I think understandably. But he let it go right then and there, even though the Browns ended up not getting a touchdown on that drive. And then when he had iced the game, while Baker might not have heard what Greg Williams said, he heard what Greg Williams said, and he didn't go after him either while running down the field, looking over to him from his sideline, or after the game. That does show a level of maturation. Now, I expect Odell backslide somewhat on maturation because that's been his tendency in his career. But he reminded everyone yesterday, once again, how dynamic, to use the word Greg Williams didn't want to use, he is and how dynamic he can be with Baker Mayfield.
He can also prove himself invaluable when Baker Mayfield is taking maybe not a step back, but a bit of a lateral move the first 2 weeks. To have a veteran guy like Odell, I'm sure what he does to Baker for his comfort level, knowing he's going to get to wherever he needs to be, that must help Baker a little bit as well, and that's where he could serve him.
And that's the reason why the expectations for them, with the record last year, the close games they played in, if they can get consistent offensive line play, they have to be able to run the ball the way they did last year. He is a dynamic player. Yes, but overall health. He's got to be able to stay healthy. His hip flexor's been bothering him for the last month. Before these 2 games, he had only played in 16 of the previous 32 games. So, yes, per game, but you can't match his resume against A.B. You take the last 3 years, A.B., Julio Jones, there is no comparison who the best receivers in football were. So Odell's got to play up to his potential. A.B. will be back, one of the top receivers playing with Tom Brady, and we have seen Julio has been the most consistent in the group. But that's the way he should play. I can't give you an applaud when you have that type of ability, especially with the offense, Freddie Kitchens, as many times he's been targeted, and the type of quarterback. When he's playing and he's focused, that is what he's supposed to do. I'm not going to give him Nick. I thought he did a good job at the press conference in his speaking points about leadership. I'm not going to give him credit for going down, scoring a touchdown, not acting a fool, not trying to single out Greg Williams. That's idiotic. That's kid stuff. At some point, you got to get beyond that. So I was happy to see him play well. He told me he was going to play well, and he followed it up.
Reports are Jalen Ramsey has requested a trade out of Jacksonville after his heated sideline exchange with head coach Doug Marrone. The Jags are looking for at least 1 first-round pick. See, what do you make of the situation?
Well, I think that it's a situation where Jalen's been unhappy there for a long time. During the game, Jalen was trying to signal to the bench to challenge a catch, non-catch with DeAndre Hopkins. They had ruled it a catch on the field. Jalen didn't think it was a catch. The replay showed that he was right. But this blew up on basically that. They had words, and I believe Jalen is best going somewhere else. He is a great player. They don't want him there. He's not part of the future. That's why they didn't sign him to a contract extension that he has earned. So it's time for them to part ways.
Listen, Jalen obviously has done some things as far as the interviews, as far as the way he comports himself, that while it doesn't bother everyone, does not fit the Tom Coughlin model of who a football player should be. But he's the best player on this football team, a football team that, in theory, thinks they can compete this year. They went out and got Nick Foles for that purpose. They're a 2-point conversion away from being tied for the divisional lead, and now they're going to trade their best player because they didn't want to pay their best player. That's what bad organizations do. Very curious to see where he lands. I think San Francisco makes a lot of sense. They have the cap space and the draft capital. A few other teams I would imagine will be interested.
The Raiders.
Oh, both of us got them going West Coast. How about that?
All right, on to the Saints now. Drew Brees will reportedly have surgery on his thumb after tearing a ligament in Sunday's loss to the Rams. The surgery would sideline him approximately 6 weeks. But head coach Sean Payton says Brees will seek a second opinion. See, how does the Saints offense change?
Well, Sean Payton's got to change the offense because Drew Brees doesn't have one of the big all-time arms as far as strength, as far as anticipation, knowing where everyone's going to be, and accuracy. He's one of the best ever. Teddy Bridgewater does not have a strong arm, doesn't have the anticipation, throws from a couple different arm angles, and when he has been at his best, it's been on a team supported by a tremendous running game. Adrian Peterson, how are we going to throw the ball deep? I'm not going to just throw it over top. A little play action fake, double moves on the outside by the wide receiver. So Sean Payton's got to be creative. That genius hat that he's been wearing, he is going to have to earn it to be able to keep them in playoff contention until Drew comes back.
Over the next 6 weeks, they have 2 very difficult games early, Dallas and Seattle. They also have the Bears on the back end of that 6-game stretch. Now, the schedule's fortunate in this regard. Arizona, Tampa, they also play, and they have a bye after 6 weeks from now. So Brees could get essentially 7+ weeks before he would have to return. Saints got to just try to go 3-3. And it's the first 2 games are 2 likely losses, 3-4 after the first couple games without Drew, be 4-4 when he comes back, try to make a run in what looks, by the way, all of a sudden, not quite as competitive of an NFC South as I thought. Thought there might be 2 or 3 playoff teams out of that division, might only be 1.
All right, on to the Steelers now. Ben Roethlisberger will undergo season-ending elbow surgery. Big Ben vowed in a statement to come back stronger than ever next season. CeCe, in your opinion, what does the future hold for Big Ben?
I believe in Big Ben in this situation. He's shown great heart throughout. You can't be the type of quarterback, play the type of style, and not be a tough guy. He's overcome tremendous obstacles, be able to get to this. I remember the horrific motorcycle accident. He was able to recover from that and go on to have a long career, I believe. And it has nothing to do with fitness. Yeah, he's not Tom Brady. He's not Drew Brees. But he's a lot better athlete than them. He's working with a lot more than them. He's a natural thrower of the football, doesn't have to practice on throwing the ball an awful lot, doesn't spend a whole bunch of time in the offseason working out in cleats and everything like the other guys do, and that's because he's gifted. That doesn't mean he can't overcome an arm injury because he's got far more arm talent than those other guys.
I believe Ben will be back, but I don't think he'll be back in the playoffs because I don't think the Steelers, even with the addition of Minkah Fitzpatrick, are going to be one of the top teams in the AFC the next couple of years. I also think we were already seeing last year he did lead the NFL in passing. He also led the NFL in interceptions. And when you saw a team that go from 13 wins to 9 wins, this year I thought they were going to go to 7 wins before he got hurt. So the era, in my mind, the Steelers' Big Ben competing for championships, I think that came to a close right after this play.
All right, let's stick with the Steelers now. They did trade their 2020 first-round pick to the Dolphins for safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, the 11th overall pick in last year's draft, who asked the Dolphins to trade him last week. All right, C, what do you make of the move?
I'm glad his mom got on Twitter. It's like, get that kid out of there, because this is a kid that, and it's really not fair if we try to have a conversation about him and Jalen Ramsey in the same breath. Jalen has developed a reputation as far as he's going to be a guy. He's not a bad guy. He's not going to get in trouble. He's a family guy and everything, but he's going to be a talker. So that's going to rub certain people the wrong way. This kid, Minkah, has been a captain in high school, a stellar 5-star player in the Jersey area, accolades on and off the field, and everywhere he's been. Nick Saban talks about him being one of the most mature, best football players that he's ever had. He's one of the few players that gets through that rugged program of Alabama without any significant injury and or surgery. He's 22 years old, turns 23 in November. He is better than anyone in college football that's in the secondary. Any free safety in college football, any corner in college football. So if you're able to get him in a trade, you don't have to pay him that signing bonus. That's the ugliest part of the contract. So you've gotten through that. Yes, he would be a great addition to any organization. He is well thought out. He's a smart football player. He can play a variety of positions, can play both safeties, can play nickel in the slot. He's not a pure corner. And sometimes Miami they utilize that versatility just a little too much.
If this trade had happened Saturday,
before Roethlisberger got hurt,
for the Steelers, I'd give it an A+, because I think that, first of all, people need to understand he was drafted last year. So he's not, in another way, he's not like Jalen, is that it's not like the rookie contract's about to expire. No. He's going to be on this incredibly cheap deal the next few years at a minimum. And he was the 11th pick of last year's draft, but now he's a proven commodity. Now we know he can play in the NFL. That, to me, makes him as valuable as the 5th or 6th pick of this year's draft, because it's a crapshoot in the draft, and you know that he is a quality NFL player. The reason for me, when I saw the Steelers traded for him, I was so shocked is, with Ben now going to miss the year, the Steelers over their next 7 games before they get to their bye, they'll be favored in 2 of them. So just going through, they'll be favored home against Cincinnati, home against Miami. Baltimore Chargers, Indy, Rams, at Cleveland. I believe they'll be underdogs. They are staring at not only their first losing season in 15 years, but a potential top 8 pick,
so you
maybe
want
a
them
top
to hold
5
on to that pick.
When you have a great veteran quarterback, one of the problems is, as he is getting older, when are you going to be able to reload at that position? Very rarely do you have what happened in Indy, where you have the great veteran quarterback, he gets injured, misses a year, and you fall into Andrew Luck. The Steelers had a potential not to fall into an Andrew Luck, not to have the number 1 pick of the draft, but to have a top 5 pick this year. And I think they will end up with a top 7 pick this year. And to give that up where it could be a quarterback that you then take for the next decade, to me, is an incredibly risky move by Pittsburgh.
Well, one thing that you're not seeing is you don't see Pittsburgh's board. You don't see their college scouting. Pittsburgh has done a great job as far as drafting, developing players. Not only just first-rounders, but guys later down the round. You don't know if their draft board says these 2 quarterbacks, and that being Tua at Alabama and the quarterback at Oregon,
Herbert,
are they top 10 picks? You're automatically putting that grade on them. Kevin Colbert's done a great job there. He might not have that grade on him, Nick. So them trading for Minkah still could be an A+ with that top pick, because there's no defender in college as good as him, and the value for which you're getting him at to be able to rebuild that defense that has had problems. So to me, there's a couple things that we don't know. You don't know what their big board says, and to me, I don't see those quarterbacks turning around some franchise. There's question marks about both of them.
And what we do know now with this is they believe that Ben's going to be back next year. They also clearly, when you bring up Kevin Colbert, and I don't know how much of a hand Mike Tomlin had in this, but Mike Tomlin was the defensive backs coach. That's how he cut his teeth before he was a D coordinator for 1 year. So this is his area of expertise. They also believe, man, we need to win. There's a lot of speculation that Kevin Colbert could end up in Carolina after this year. We talked about Mike Tomlin. Is he on the hot seat going into the season? They do not want to punt on this year. They want to try to compete even with Mason Rudolph as their quarterback. It's not the move I would have made given Ben's injury, but that's the direction they're taking.
And we don't know the second point I wanted to make, we don't know what their feeling is on the young quarterbacks, and we don't know how they feel about Mason Rudolph. I believe they like Mason Rudolph. That's the reason why you make this move. He's been in your building. He's got great arm talent. He is a good athlete. So if you had him in your program and at the value for which you got him, to me, that's worth more than those guys out there in college who have huge question marks as far as them moving forward. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have done well at the draft and will continue to do so moving forward.
That was my point. And now the Pittsburgh Steelers team is going to be turned over to Mason Rudolph, at least for the next couple weeks, see what he can do. Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.